Welcome to Fungi Frontiers, the official podcast of the Maine Fungi Fest. I'm your host, Bobby Paluzzi. Let's go. No questions needed. Here we go. Welcome very much, Ryan Rich. This is Fungi Frontiers, the official podcast of the Maine Fungi Fest, taking place this year in Sebago Lake, May 30th and June 1st, all the way through. So, Ryan, happy to have you. I'm looking at your social media, and you're extensively traveled, and you also have a would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
I agree with that. Okay, and you also have a name that you added to your name right in the middle, as if to almost be a moniker or a nickname, and I want to pronounce it correct. Jen E. Go.
Good. Close. It's actually Genigo or actually
Genny.
Frenigo. It has like a little bit of an R to it, but I just say Genigo. It's all good.
Okay, so starting there, Mystery
Yep.
Man, we want to know what that is, and then we want to hear more about, what your focus is, and particularly its root healing, and particularly I wrote down something else that you have something where you want to break people free of the chains of programming. So start
Yeah.
us off.
Okay. So yeah. So the name Genigo is just my spiritual name. I got it in Gabon, and it
Gabon.
means kind of yeah, Gabon. So that's going to be a big topic for a lot of this because that's where this tradition that I'm sharing about the Bwiti tradition. It's actually pronounced Bwete also. So a lot of these pronunciations can be kind of tough.
I knew I had it
And
wrong.
yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone says Bwiti now. It's pretty
Yeah.
common. So it all kind of comes from Gabon. Southern Gabon is where it originated. And so yeah, so I got my name there. Um, and yeah, usually people get their name in initiations and things like that, but mine was given to me by my spiritual father outside of that. And
Do
yeah,
we
and
know what
so
it, do you know what it means? That
yeah, it means to sum it up very, very because it's kind of a long explanation, but it means producer of wheaty things.
nice. Okay, cool.
So, yeah. And then yeah, so you said that the breaking the change of conditioning and stuff, essentially, yeah, that's kind of like the work that I do professionally with root healing and have done for the past 5 years, and also with Basse Root, which is the local church that we have set up here in the United States. I'm here in Connecticut right now, but we're also going to be doing stuff up in Maine starting in a few weeks, actually.
Okay, so particularly then this, how did you pronounce this? Bwiti? How should I
Yeah,
say that?
Boete is the
Bwete.
true way to say it.
Bwete, Iboga work? Um, what I'm wondering is, I'm sure a lot of people don't know about it, and it
Mhm.
almost has that, is this another ayahuasca kind of, can I associate it in that same way? Because it seems to have healing or consciousness awakening properties that allow somebody to break the chains of their programming. So, how did you particularly figure out that you could use this substance in the U.S.? I don't mean legally, I
Um,
mean, as a
Yeah,
healer.
yeah, I'll respond to there's a few points in there. So, as far as comparing it to ayahuasca, I would say that it's similar in the sense that it's a plant medicine.
Right.
So it has a spirit to it, and it has a kind of an agenda working with you, and its agenda is that to kind of reconnect you to your true self and set you free of kind of societal conditioning and all of those things, patterned behavior, stuff that's not genuine. Other than that, though, it's completely different from ayahuasca. So that's
Hmm.
something that I always have to kind of clarify with people.
Cool.
And it's actually completely different from all other psychedelics. It's actually technically an oneric, which is something that activates the part of your brain that's active when you're sleeping, but keeps you wide
Mm,
awake.
mm,
Um, and I'd say it's more of it kind of works in the opposite direction. So like a lot of psychedelics and plant medicines kind of show you cryptic visions or like, really deep, meaningful journeys and or, hard to decipher
hmm.
kind of stuff. Iboga, though, is the other direction. It's not focused on anything else but you. So it's like holding a mirror to yourself. And it's very simple and direct. Um, And then yeah, so so it's very different in that way. Um, and
So
then
you
yeah, so
say, oh,
basic.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
You
you go
say
ahead.
you say it's focused. It sounds like,
Mhm.
in other words, the activation of it. If you do it correctly, it will do these things for you. Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
it doesn't do anything for you. It just shows you the truth.
Ah,
I
okay.
mean, just like mushrooms and ayahuasca. I mean,
Well,
it just
enable
works in
you.
a different way.
It can
Yeah, yeah,
enable
yeah.
you.
It's just revealing stuff for you, and then it's empowering you to make different choices for yourself. But really, it just wants to connect you to you.
So what do you think took you to that particular place where that shrub grew?
Yeah, yeah. So it saved my life, actually. That's why, that's what I was going to get to. Kind of,
Sure.
the first time I used it was actually, I mean, at this point, it might be 15 years ago, even more. And I just ordered it and took the Iboga TA without any tradition or anything around it, because I needed it. I struggled with alcohol and drug addiction and was just at a really tough time in my life. So, and I'd always used psychedelics as a way to kind of parent myself and heal myself when I needed it. And so I did that, and it was profound, and it was really great. But then, a few months later, I slipped back and found myself crashing back into all of that stuff again. And then uh, fast forward, probably a long time, I came back to Iboga, but this time I was like, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to go to Gabon where it comes from. I'm going to learn the tradition and just give that a shot because I something wasn't right about the first way I did it. And then so what I did is, yeah, I went straight to Gabon and immediately that I knew the difference. The ceremony, like after that first ceremony, everything was radically changed. And I've been obsessed with the Boga and the Bwiti tradition ever since. And then eventually trained and worked with it and have been for about 5 years now running retreats.
Because you went back and it did what you knew it could, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, it saved my life.
Hmm.
It reconnected me to myself, which is exactly what I needed. I was lost. I was, had all sorts of pattern behavior that wasn't genuine. Addiction
Right.
I was just, had an unhealthy relationship to myself. So once you connect to yourself, which is what Aboga's main point is, kind of helps with all the other things.
Connecting with yourself. It seems as though there is this possibility always to disconnect with oneself. And it seems to be a Western thing.
Mhm.
Lots of distractions. So, what I need from you, if you could, is to explain the cultural difference. You said that one time you went and you didn't do a ritual, then the next time there was a ritual or ceremony that went with it. I want you to
Yeah.
explain somehow the significance of what you were able to get more out of it when there was a guided ritual.
Yeah, so I mean, so basic. I didn't go to Gabon the first time I took a
Right,
boga.
right.
Yeah, I did it on my own without any tradition. The difference was itself the tradition. So, which and I'm going to be talking about this a lot at Fungi Fest. The tradition might be one of the oldest spiritual traditions in the world, and it's all about staying connected, being present, and being in reality. So it's actually an antidote to the modern era of us being so disconnected. And so that's kind of what happened for me is I realized I learned how to be with myself, and then I learned how to stay there, and then I learned that we were all a part of nature, and that I was part of nature too. And so that separation, which I think is at the root of all of these problems, was healed through Iboga by kind of showing me who I am and my connection to all of that. And it was the tradition that gave me the context to understand it. So the
Ah,
tradition is essentially like you say you can't have Bwiti without Iboga and Iboga without Bwiti, and I couldn't agree with that more because it's like having the language of Iboga. It's the context and understanding
okay.
and the way that it works with you.
Now I get it.
So,
So
cool.
Witi Iboga is it's an entire experience,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Iboga essentially is just
a
the root
lifestyle.
bark of the Tabernacle Iboga plant, and then the tradition Wheatie is what is kind of wed to that and comes from it. Actually, it comes from the spirit of Iboga itself.
Okay, great. Wow. So we're going to learn about that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would like to know now what you're currently doing with this shrub and how long it's been since you first took it, and then the journey of what made you say, all right, the rest of the world needs this, or particularly I'm kind of interested in how you thought it could apply in the United States
Hmm.
with a different ritual here. You know, it
Hmm.
can't be the exact same one. You're not in that country. So, what made you say, okay, we can do this in the United States effectively?
Well, actually, so yeah, I mean, just to go through the journey, what we're doing in the United States actually comes from a long learning process that I've been through. I started, we started in the States doing underground ceremonies, and actually, our ceremonies are to a T almost as similar as they can be to the traditional ceremonies,
Hmm.
um, where we sit around a fire, we do a fire talk, and they share Briti teachings and things like that, teach them about the medicine and the music, everything outside of having the live performances and things like that is pretty close to the same. But of course, it's way better if you're there. But yeah, so he started in the U.S. in Colorado, actually doing underground retreats, and then we went to Portugal, where we were for about 5 years or 4 years.
Yeah.
And in Portugal, we had a pretty nice center, and we're doing pretty big retreats and actually doing like 1 to 3 retreats a month, 8-day retreats. I mean, 2 to 3 a month.
Hmm.
So we were constantly doing it, and it's just because we love it. And then eventually I went and expanded it to Thailand, which is where my spiritual home, Chiang Mai, is. I
Mm.
absolutely love it there. And we did retreats there for a long period of time. And then I had a family situation where my brother-in-law was sick and I needed to come back here, and it was too much to manage two retreat centers. And it was cool because I made the decision to close both of them and then come here. And in coming here, I wanted to create um, kind of like I wanted to build it the way that I believed in it after all these years and what I had learned. And
Nice.
I never really liked the business side of the whole thing and having to do admin and all that.
Hmm.
And I always really cared about reciprocity and equitable access. So basically, it just already though in the United States, in order to do this, the most kind of legal that you can, you would need to do it through the church model.
Hmm.
But I loved the church model anyway because it had the nonprofit part built in. And, it allowed for us to also raise money for reciprocity to do projects in Gabon, which I'll be talking about. Um, and also it allowed us to accept donations for equitable access and really put a focus on that so that people can come and engage with the tradition. So yeah, so the model here in the United States and we're making it even closer and closer to what we can to what it is in Gabon. So we're doing like lots of community events and
Hmm.
different things like that, having like the low dose fire circles for past guests and really trying to keep it as a community like it is there.
Let's take a moment for our sponsor love here on Fungi Frontiers and the Maine Fungi Fest. We'd like to thank Bega Provisions, LLC, North Spore, Healer, Sanctuary, Float Harder, Elevate Mushrooms, the People's Congregation of Shakers and Movers, Apotheosis Fungi, Leaf Filter Gutter Protection, Root Healing, Iboga Retreats, Southwest Shroomery, Veteran Psychedelic Network, MN Nice Botanicals, Creative Oxford Hills, Maine Intimacy, Relationship and Sex Coaching, Renewal by Anderson, Nevea Dance Circus, Maine only, Riverside Lodge and Sauna, The Sacred Self, Decriminalize Maine, Driftless Saunas, Wild Embodiment, Creative Expressions, Good Medicine Collective, Nord Creative, and we'll see Podmani at the Maine Fungi Fest 2025 as well. I like it. I think, though, when you leave and you're not in Gabon, that's the thing.
Yeah,
And that's for me. I'm saying, okay, does the transformation continue if I just go back and get in my Toyota, and go home and do the same things? I'm confronted with that same stuff that I was before I left. I'm sure it's not that
totally.
simple. I'm sure it's not that simple, but that's my big question. is does the cultural aspect, since it's in the word there, the ritual goes with the plant, does it find itself an absolutely necessary component of taking this? Or is there some day that we could put it in a form that's very Western? You see what I'm saying?
Uh, oh, yeah, yeah. I
So
won't
so
let you do
people can
that.
understand it. Yeah, people can understand
Yeah.
it without having to go through a cultural experience necessarily.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
possible?
totally.
Yeah.
So that's like 90% of the work that we're doing now is
Right.
trying to be very careful and considerate about
Right.
that because it is a kind of balance that's hard to take. And
Right.
actually, Sarah, who's my partner at Baseru, and she'll be at Fungi Fest as well. Her and I were just in Gabon like a few weeks ago, or maybe 2 months ago.
Right.
And we had that experience of being there and being totally present and engrossed in the
Immersed.
tradition.
Right.
Yeah, and then coming back here and it's like whiplash, everything's super fast and like crazy, and it is very, very different here. And so that's something that we need to understand and be aware of. And also, there is a little bit of a translation that needs to happen. But as far as separating, like I know it's a lot of cultural context, but separating that from Iboga, I think is kind of the same problem that's at the root of a lot of our disconnection, is this
Uh-huh.
idea that we need to westernize things or and kind of make it more clinical and more like a prescription drug or things like that.
I
I think
want
that
to I
that's
want
where it
to I want
loses
to
sight.
say something. I want to say people think that that is safer. People think that that's cleaner, and people think along those terms. So
Totally.
for you to bridge that gap is, I guess, what I'm really hankering on this today with
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm
No,
like,
that's great.
how do we bridge this gap? Because when you hear that there's a cultural experience, you might not click with that cultural experience, or you might.
Absolutely.
Does that
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
that's not the plant for you, or you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
it does. Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Actually, it
yeah.
does. So
See,
Iboga,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Perfect. And that's really good what you just said because I think it's important. I think
Mm.
we have this kind of Western medical superiority complex going on that's deeply embedded. And listen,
Something like that.
I
Yeah, something like
I
that.
understand it, agree with it. If I break my arm, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna go to the doctor.
Put a cast
But
on. Yeah.
there is a misunderstanding though, and I think a misallocation of trust because the Bwiti have been working with Iboga since the beginning of human history and understand how to do it safely and the
Mm.
way to work with it. Whereas here we are in the West and it's new to us, like let's say Ibogaine, because that's actually it's too hard to explain, but it's the single alkaloid that's much more popular here in the United States.
Ah.
And I don't want to get into explaining the differences there, but I will in my talk. But basically, it's being used all over the United States, or trying to be used and funded for research in the United States for addiction treatments and all sorts of
Ah.
things like that. Um, and I would say that, yes, in the context of a detox, you definitely want medical staff there and support and all of those things because it can be incredibly dangerous. That's a medical procedure, that part. But I would recommend that after that, what people do is that they do the spiritual ceremonies and do the personal work because that's actually what happened with me and Sarah. Actually, we both she used Ibogaine 20 years ago, and I used Iboga before the Bwiti tradition, and both of us got helped initially, but then we didn't have the tools and the connection to ourselves to carry that on for the rest of our lives. And that's what this brings.
So you said carry that on. Now, particularly if I'm really going to get specific here, I want to say what that word
Yeah.
that, that word that, that word
Hmm.
that. What is it to you
I
when you
can
say that?
I
What
can
is that?
sum it up in two
Yeah.
words, actually. Just be. And that's at the root of all of this ability to be natural. So in Bwiti, we say that we're all a part of nature and that nature is perfect, actually. And our problem is that disconnection from the perfection, this where we think that we can do better than nature or we can make nature better than perfect. And that separation and viewpoint is kind of what causes most of our anxiety, stress, depression, and stuff like that is instead of knowing who we are, we're way too concerned with the external forces and that separates us from ourselves.
I think so. We're obsessed with them.
Yes,
There's an objectivity to everything.
totally.
The curiosity is then, are people in Gabon, since they're more attuned to this Bwiti uh, experience, are they more tuned in to the everyday and the integration, like you're explaining?
Yeah, most of
Have they
them. I
less
mean, they have.
chains?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They definitely do. I mean, like I said, when we were just there, I mean, it almost takes a minute to kind of land and meet them in the
Ah,
where they're at.
right.
And that's just kind of like shaking all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, they are, but not all of them. And to be fair, like, it's starting to spill over everywhere, right? Like a lot of them have phones now, and a lot of them, the French colonization has caused a lot of them to be less self-sufficient and dependent on society and things.
External.
Yeah, so again, it's kind of it start and also there's other colonial influences happening there in all different directions, which I'll talk about in the Boga in the West
Yeah,
talk.
sure.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, mostly yes. And then if you talk about the Babango people, who are the ones who discovered Bwiti, created Bwiti, discovered Iboga,
Hmm.
they're known as the Pygmies, but that's a derogatory term by a lot of
Oh,
people, by
interesting.
the French. They are very much still nomadic, and a lot of them still living in the jungles nomadically, and as close to it as it was as before. And I'd say that they're probably the closest to that.
Okay, so what do you do? All of a sudden now, I have gone through an experience like this. I have not, but I'm just saying figuratively, if I did, and now I've found like this other side maybe of me
Mm,
that's like always been there. That's why I've had
mm.
experiences somewhat like that, so I'm starting to recognize this is what might happen. What
Yeah, yeah,
else
that's great.
happens? What else happens? What else does happen in one's life? And how did you? I guess I know how you carried on, but how about maybe tapping into some of the people you've helped, just in general,
Yeah.
and how they've moved on once they've had the bit of awakening, or shall we say?
Yeah, yeah. So this is the most important part of the experience, actually, what you're touching on. So I'm glad you brought that up. A boga shows you the truth, right? Like I said, but it doesn't make the changes for you. It just gives you all the data and information that you need to see the patterns of behavior. It shows you how your mind works. It shows you a lot of these things. And then it's on you when you go home. You're empowered by Iboga, and it's the spirit stays with you for up to 6 months, but it's on you to make the right choices and do the right things. And that's where this tradition really comes into handy because, and actually, I want to say that this is a spiritual tradition. It's not a religion, even though like we're under the church model and stuff like that. Actually, like they would be very adamant to call it a tradition and not a religion. And it's almost as similar to Stoicism, I'd say, is probably the closest comparison. So it's very
Interesting.
pithy, very direct, and it has these little teachings like everything is nothing until you make it something, you know, just be, very quick, pithy statements that you can remind yourself throughout the day and that help you. And it actually will come up. Like when you go home after the retreat, there's going to be challenges. And that's actually where the spirit of Iboga comes into play because it'll create space between you and the stimuli and the choice or decision that you make
Hmm.
and give you and remind you kind of the context of how you've acted previously and where that led and just kind of give you the full context for you to make the better choice. So and then obviously we do a lot to support people as well. We have integration calls, group calls, and we're trying to build on the community ongoing because more and more that's another big aspect that we're trying to improve upon. And actually that is, I'd say it's different, in the sense that we all have busy schedules and stuff, but that's how they have it in Gabon too. Like they do have the community, they do have regular ceremonies with each other where they, it's not a full dose ceremony, but it's low dose and they're spending time talking about all of these things. So I think it's important to keep building on that end. But honestly, the after leaving retreat, the solution with Iboga is to continue following the Bwiti tradition and applying that to your life, and that will keep you there.
Usually there's a bit of a like an elated feeling or something that almost, if you're doing mushroom ceremony, almost a little beyond. And especially with ritual, you're in an exotic universe. So coming out of that, you have a lingering sense of your the transformation that you took in. And if you got
Mhm.
a lot out of it, you soaked it in, so to speak. So then you get out there and you're back out in your world, like I say, and you're in the that world of decisions. And you're saying there might be this distance that you can relate to between, say, something, your choices that you want to make, and if you want to make them in this way that you may have recognized within yourself, or do you want to just do some habit and get right
Mhm.
back into a habit,
Mhm.
Um, there's something there that you said. Now after that you'd have a follow-up or a community that works with it, so you can kind of talk it out a bit.
Mhm.
Because I'm wondering if the elation wears off, and is that the same thing as the spirit staying with you for 6 months? That's my question.
Yeah. So partially, yeah, for sure. And there is an elation, and everybody's super like excited and ready when they go home. And and that will end.
Right.
Like real life happens. But again, I'll kind of say this in a different way. I mean, Iboga is a root. So it's actually the root of the Tabernanthe Iboga tree. And I don't think that's a figurative accident. Like it's meant to be, what it does. So
Huh.
it's rooting you back into yourself, and then it's showing you, like you just said, like go back to patterned behavior. It's showing you the roots of all of those choices, so
Right.
that so that they can't take root in you again.
Mm.
And so, you know, yeah, and so that's how we support people, is just kind of like, a lot of the integration calls and stuff is them just sharing kind of where they're at, and then it's just basically the same thing as the fire talk at the circle before they lay down for ceremony, and
Mm.
reminding them of the Bwiti teachings and stuff. Because again, all you have to do is kind of reorient them back to themselves. Because the biggest thing that takes you out of that elation, or that being present, that flow state, is when you consider other people above yourself, when you start changing your behavior or doing things because that's what someone else wants, and instead of being your own firstborn child and treating yourself that way, which
Well,
is kind of also a part of the tradition.
you just let us in on a very nice aspect of the way you do things. I could have gone there and asked, is there a guru? But it sounds like you're
No, no.
you're handling it, in a way that is more
Oh no, yeah, no
everybody's on their
gurus.
own a bit, but we're all here together.
Yeah,
And
that's our job. We're just
nobody's
supportive.
nobody's in charge like that. So please now explain, if someone listening wanted to go and experience this. What are some options?
So I mean, most of these people are going to be in the United States, so we do retreats in Connecticut and soon in Maine, almost every, at least one a month, pretty regularly, and then we do private retreats and ceremonies. We'll be doing some other events and things like that, so that people can engage with Witi without having to go to retreat, because we really just want to start sharing this tradition as well, not just the medicine.
Mm,
And so yeah, and then I also have another nonprofit that I'm working on, that's very much focused on the translation of Bwiti to the West, and focusing on making sure that's done with care, and that's called the Masoko Bwiti Alliance. But that'll just have more information, mostly online, for people to engage with. But if they want to come to retreat, all they have to do is just email us or reach out to Base Root or Root Healing, and we do retreats all the time.
okay. So pretty much East Coast for now. And but you've been all over. You've been to the Colorado doing it, and you've been. Can you tell me in a summary way? I mean, you're still doing it. It's probably not like you got a lot of trouble along the way, and that is to say,
Oh,
discontent or anything. But I don't get a sense from you either that you're going to tell me like, oh, it's the most coolest. So I'm just want to say like, just give me like your rundown summary in a very nice way of what your career has developed into, and how it's helping people.
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest way the career has developed is that I don't think of it as a career anymore. I think
Sure.
I was very, I mean, this is just, I'll be totally transparent. I think I was very influenced by my Western background when I initially started doing this work. We had multiple centers. I had a beautiful center on the top of the mountain in central
Right.
Portugal and in Thailand. And I was trying to focus on making like the best experience possible for people, covering everything that they needed, and bringing them the coconuts in Thailand to their rooms on processing day,
Mm,
all of that amazing stuff. And it was great, and we accomplished it.
yeah.
But what I learned is that's great and all, but that's not what this is. And what it is exactly what it was in Gabon. It's all about connecting people to themselves, empowering them, and helping them to fall in love with themselves again. And in that process, all of those things just really don't matter as much. And that's not to say we don't do that here. But the focus here is very much like brass tacks, to the point. Um, And I think it fits sweet tea and Iboga much better.
We go out of ourselves a lot here in the West. We established that earlier in the conversation. And it seems to be a habitual thing, or it seems to be coming at you, asking you to do it all day long. Every billboard is another
Yes.
invitation to drive in that direction and take your brain in that direction. And man, when I'm on the phone flipping and surfing, they don't call it that anymore. That's too cool. But whatever it was that we used to do, when I'm doing that, I can get so fretted in my mind, just all like, what am I doing here? I have to get off. And then I say, wow, there's this too? Because I was so deeply entrenched in this like nitty gritty little world of, and it's so small, and I'm going like this. There's something, and I just think there's something wrong with that.
Totally.
So it's so nice to hear somebody that's kind of worked through it and seen people work through it, but not in some drastic way, in a way that maybe you could continue the rest of your life feeling less congested with all this.
Mm.
So I do appreciate that a lot, and I am curious myself now that we've talked because it sounds very much like the kind of directive of mine that I'm looking for a bit.
Mm.
You tend to, at a certain age, look back, and it's not a validation, but it is a validation of life itself. And you want to
Mm.
say, have I followed? I know I've gone off here and there, but is there some strain that is me that has been pure and cool the whole time? Or have I been just chasing these externals, trying to replicate this or that until I get it right?
Mhm.
And this is where a lot of people are, and this is where we are, I think, like I said, when we're on the television and we're doing these things. But I felt your groundedness this whole time we've been speaking.
Mm.
So you're a testament to your very methods, in the way. So I'm going to be fascinated when I come out there. Hopefully we can maybe do this again. I'm going to have a booth
Yeah.
myself,
Oh, great.
and then maybe get a guest or somebody that's tried it out. Um, Please give us one last little something something. I usually ask people how they enjoy the fest,
How they enjoy what?
the main Fungi Fest, how they enjoyed it or what they think of it.
Oh, I mean, I'm just super excited. I've never actually been because I've been living abroad for the past like 13 years.
Yeah,
Um,
great. So
so
just
yeah, but I mean, I've been going up to Maine a lot, and I love all the people there. It's a little different than this tri-state area, and I'm
yeah.
super excited to share this tradition up there because I think actually Maine people up in Maine in that area are much more receptive to these things and closer to the mark. So I'm definitely excited.
Yeah, you're right. Maine is Maine has got its own vibe. It's really great.
I
I'm
love
really
it.
happy to associate. One more time, Ryan, middle name.
My Genigo, but my real middle name's Christopher.
Ryan Genigo, Christopher Rich. What a
There you
splendid
go.
conversation. We're gonna be psyched to see you over there, and invite everybody to have something to do with it. So thank you
Thanks.
very much, Ryan, and yeah, we'll be seeing each other soon.
All right, thanks, Bobby. Take
Thank you
care.
for the interview. Fungi Frontiers is brought to you by Movin' On Productions, produced by Bobby Paluzzi. And we remind you to stay connected while you further your fungi frontiers. Fungi Fest. 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 Fest.